if you have the goal of limited government, how should you design the Constitution? So in sum, there should be a 2/3 majority requirement to pass any laws. There should be a negative legislature that has the power only of repealing laws. And there should be a separate constitutional court that can initiate review of any government action for constitutionality, and where the cases are decided by a jury of citizens, and then people actually get punished for violating the Constitution.
So we'll start with Corey.
Isn't a negative legislature about the same as the legislature we have now? Who would elect the negative legislature? Essentially, the legislature now has the power to repeal its own bills.
Yeah.
But they don't.
Yeah. So
how would the negative legislature be any different from?
So, well, as to who would elect them, I propose, unless there's a better idea, that they'll just be elected in the same way that the ordinary legislature is. Okay, now why would they be different? Well, this was because of the point that I was making, that legislators see their job as being to make laws, right? And the other point, that the branches of government are not really opposed to each other. But if there was a legislature that only had the power of repealing laws, then they would view their job differently. Like, they would view it as their job to constantly sit around thinking of the laws that we don't need, rather than sitting around thinking of the laws that we need. And they would also, presumably they would be opposed to the positive legislature. Like, there would be a real sense in which there was opposition between two branches of government.
So go to Ken.
The Constitution has been formed by a compact of the states, and states may nullify unconstitutional acts. For example, the 16th Amendment, the Income Tax Amendment, was not properly ratified. 3 states, Missouri, Oregon, and Oklahoma, adopted different language. If the 2 houses of Congress pass one word different, they don't send it to the president and say, we'll sort it out later. And so the necessary states to ratify the 16th Amendment were not present. They sent it off to Washington, D.C., and they said, well, we want this to be ratified. We will deem it to be ratified. Deeming means it's a legal fiction. So how do we get out of the income tax amendment? We have the state of Colorado, by citizen initiative, take ourselves out of it. We can use state law and say, if you try and enforce the income tax, we will put you in jail. And that would do away with way too much government.
Yeah, so, well, I guess I could comment on whether I think this is going to work or not. I don't think this is going to work. We have a history in which, states kind of fought against the federal government, and the states that rebelled against the federal government lost. Like, the federal government is not going to let you do this. They're going to send the men with guns. And the U.S. Army is just going to be more powerful than the Colorado State Troopers. So, sorry. I think maybe we shouldn't have the federal government at all. Like, maybe we shouldn't have done that. It should have just been the states. But anyway, whatever is the top level of government, I sort of think we need to solve the problem at this level. We need to get the top level of government to be restrained, rather than hoping that much smaller parts are going to rebel against the larger country. Right.
We'll go to Tim and then Dave.
So I have some suggestions to make your proposals more radical.
More radical?
So one is that, I don't know if you're aware, Estonia actually already has a requirement that it only takes 1/3 of the legislature to repeal a law.
Sounds great.
Then Switzerland already has a requirement that passing new laws requires a referendum has to pass with at least a majority of the popular vote.
Okay.
And then 2 other things I think you could add is a requirement that in any case where an individual, a private party is suing the government, that would have to go to binding arbitration instead of being heard by the government's own judges.
Okay.
And then lastly, you could have a mandatory sunset clause for all laws with a maximum period of something like 10 years.
Okay.
Or 2 years till the end of the next time.
I don't know. There's some laws that I don't think should have a sunset clause. I don't think there should be a sunset clause on the murder statutes, but maybe that's okay because it's just going to get passed every time, right? The idea of, maybe everything should require a referendum of the citizens. Maybe that's a good idea. Like maybe it should be that in addition to passing the legislature. Also has to pass with a majority vote of the population. There are some things that would not have passed if that was the rule, right? So the bailouts in 2008 to 9 wouldn't have passed. They were popular among legislators, but not among the general public. Okay, wait, I've forgotten the other things that you were saying.
One-third repeal.
That's
Yeah.
basically it.
Yeah, the number
Okay.
on repeal, I had a question about that. What would be a good level of the
Oh.
legislature to repeal? If there's a negative legislature, would you need 1/3, half, or a supermajority?
Oh, I don't know. I was assuming it was going to be a simple majority, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We could entertain.
Wrong answer there.
We could I didn't know. Well, we could think about argument. I mean, it's not that every law is bad. Or I mean, if you're a minarchist, then you probably think that at least some of the laws should stand. So you don't want to set the bar too low for repealing things, right? Anyway, okay.
So go over to Dave and then Russ. And Art.
Thank you for a thoughtful, interesting presentation. I'd like to get more fundamental, though,
Yeah.
if I might. As a professor of philosophy, you certainly have an appreciation for metaphysics, epistemology, morality, and politics. Specifically, the relationship between the latter two. Do you believe that an objective morality is possible? And if so, is it able to be implemented politically?
So some things are objectively wrong, like, murder. And can that be implemented politically? Yes, like we have laws against murder. It's easy. I mean, the problem is that people try to pass too many laws. So people try to pass laws that prohibit things that are not objectively wrong, like using drugs or whatever. If you want to hear my views about ethics, you should see my other book, Ethical Intuitionism, and in addition to my book, The Problem of Political Authority. Is that a good enough? Does that answer your question?
I don't want to take up a whole
All right.
So we had Russ, and then over here, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Russ.
What self-interested motive or what incentive would the negative legislature have to not collude with the existing legislature to say, hey, keep passing laws, we've got to have something to reach? Why would they create a symbiotic relationship where they both look like they're working all the time? While they approve and they revoke?
I don't know. I mean, one thought, I'm not sure that the negative legislature would think, so they might think that their job is to repeal laws, but I'm not sure that they would think that their job is to get laws passed so that they can repeal them. You might think, oh yeah, but then they can tell the voters, hey, I'm doing my job because I repealed 3 laws or whatever. But actually, the overwhelming majority of voters don't know what you're doing anyway, right? And then the other thing is, if you vote for laws that immediately get repealed, it's hard to see how that's going to be good, both for the people who voted for it and for the people who repealed it, right? Like if it was a popular law, then the people who repealed it, that's going to hurt them at the polls. But if it was an unpopular law, it's going to hurt the people who voted for it, like the positive legislature, right? So there are not going to be that many issues on which that would work out, right? So that they would both profit.
So J.K., Eric, and then Ken.
First of all, thank you. Enjoyed it very much. On the Constitutional Court, I like that because, we have been so disappointed with the failure of the current court. I don't think I like the people serving it sounds a little too democratic, and it seems to me it would be very dangerous to get nine CU philosophy students just to pick something out of a hat, and put them in charge of deciding the constitutionality of legislation. And I'm not enamored with experts or pointy-head Ivy League guys, but I don't sense in the general populace a good enough feel for constitutionality limited government. I worry about making that a overly democratic court, and if we're not going to do that, then you kind of back into the same boat of where are those people coming from?
Yeah. So there are a couple of issues there. I mean, so one, when you mentioned having 12 CU students, I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but that would be a really biased sample, right? Like, they're not.
That's how I took it also.
They were so like that would be putting 12 or whatever it is, putting 12 leftists. But we have a process for choosing jurors where presumably that wouldn't go through. Okay, but anyway, and then you might think, so I think this was the other part. You might think, well, ordinary people just don't really understand the Constitution. They're not really qualified. But the thing is, like, the reason they don't understand it is that they never took the time, like they never read it. Nobody ever told them, and they don't care because they have no stake. But when people are on a jury, like, they have to sit there and listen to the arguments. So they actually will be informed at the time that they hear the case that somebody's putting forward. And I mean, it seems to me like most of the unconstitutional laws, any ordinary person could see that they were unconstitutional. Like, it would take a very clever legal mind. It would take an expert to come up with the rationale in Wickard versus Filburn for why it's okay to limit how much corn somebody grows. On their own farm to feed their own pigs, right? An ordinary person would not go for that reasoning. Okay, so, I mean, I don't know, I think defense attorneys generally think that the jury system is pretty good. I'm not sure prosecutors like it as much, but I think basically people pay attention when there's only 12 of them. They don't pay attention at the voting booth because there's like 100 million of them, and they know that it doesn't make any difference. And they didn't listen to any sophisticated arguments. They just listened to stupid, rhetoric. But in the jury box, they actually sit there and listen to the real arguments. So.
Go to Eric and then over to Ken.
Yeah.
So I agree with JK, I think. Maybe I'm putting words in his mouth, but I think that your judicial provision here is probably the one with the most promise. And this may fall in the same category as proposal to nullify the 16th Amendment, that the federal government won't allow it. But I think maybe your answer assumed that only one state would try to do this. So if, say, for argument's sake, all of the states with Republican governors, which is more than half of them, did that, perhaps it would be harder to resist. But I wonder if you're familiar with the current movement in this country. It's very under the radar, the common law grand jury movement, which is a similar thing where, I mean, the grand jury provision in the Constitution never said that the district attorney of the government had to call the grand jury. It's just a group of citizens can get together and say, hey, we believe this government official is committing a crime, and you refer it to the established courts for adjudication.
Okay.
Do you think something like that would have any promise?
Okay, that sounds good. Well, I mean, from a practical standpoint, would you want it to be that any group of 12 people can send a case to the court? Probably not, right?
There's a very similar system in India that drags people into court constantly by a citizen declaration. And it's to the point in India now where it's just a bunch of monkey trials going through court as retaliation for some wrong or perceived wrong done.
Yeah.
So very little gets done in the way of actual justice in Indian courts at this point. So that would be an immediate pitfall that I would think of.
Okay, yeah.
I just want to add one detail. There's a 1992, I think, Supreme Court ruling where Justice Scalia said that the common law grand jury system was constitutional, and it's effectively the fourth branch of government.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so, I worry if there are too many people who can make constitutional challenges, even though I'm a libertarian anarchist. Like, from a practical standpoint, I don't think that you can really propose that, there should be like 1 million constitutional challenges a year, right? It shouldn't be that. So, like, maybe there should be just somebody whose job, just like an office, where your job is to find violations of the Constitution. So, and in order for there to be a real court case, like, there has to be two sides. So, what I proposed already kind of implies that you have to have somebody who prosecutes the government. So there has to be like an office where your job is to prosecute the government for violating the Constitution. Maybe that's what it should be.
So we'll go there, and then we'll head back over to you guys since you've already asked questions. Go ahead.
So just to kind of follow up on that, and I had this same question about your constitutional, who pays them? Because you talked about it being, these people being biased in favor of the government because the government's given them a job. And now we're possibly creating a whole nother court, but also still paid by the government, right? Your bias doesn't go away when the government pays this person whose job it is to sit around and figure out which laws to challenge. He's still being paid by the government.
Yeah, I volunteer to donate to their salary.
Well, and that's
one solution.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so one thing is, well, maybe they would be on, on a government salary like all the other government employees. And then you might sort of worry about, maybe the positive legislature will like cut the salaries of the negative legislature people to try to make them go home or something. So we might have to make, there might have to be special rules about that.
That'd be the first law they repeal.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, or maybe they should just be volunteers.
If you guys are still poking holes in these great ideas, think about anarchy.
I mean, I think the idea of having them be volunteers is not totally unworkable. Like, I think there are a fair number of people who would volunteer for that job, and would really do it, wouldn't just goof off.
So we'll go over to Ken, and then Tim, and then Justin, and then Wendy, did you put your hand up?
No, I think I volunteer.
Oh, she's volunteering. All right.
She wants to be on the negative legislature.
So you mentioned, Professor, that maybe we should have the citizens ratify all the laws. That's actually the provision in Colorado. And the only exception is if the legislature finds that it's an emergency. So every single bill that passes through the Colorado legislature has a safety clause that says we don't need to go to the people because this is really a vital, important, urgent law.
I see.
So there are ways that have been tried and they tend to be subverted. Secondly, I would note that juries have the power to nullify laws, and that terrifies the statists. So the judge says you may only judge the facts, you can't judge the law, but in truth you can judge the law as well as the facts. If they said anybody named Michael must jump 50 feet high, the jury would be told, did he jump that high or not? Not, is this a silly law? And in truth, many of these silly laws would be pitched out by juries. That's what happened to prohibition. The juries simply would not convict. And they took it out of the Constitution. And then the prosecutorial and judicial complex said, let's start lying to the jury. And so just as states can nullify unconstitutional laws, jurors can nullify any law. And so that's the system. And for the grand jury, I would encourage everybody to study the career of Tom Dewey. Tom Dewey was in New York State, which had many corrupt officials, and he kept impaneling grand juries and hammering them, and almost made it to the presidency.
Okay. So, about that clause, unless it's an emergency, maybe that should just be deleted, right? So there was a time when you would have to have that because, there might be something that needs to be passed pretty quickly and you don't want to wait for 3 months or something. But today, actually, you could have an election really quickly because of the internet, right? So yeah, maybe that should just be out. Let's see. And then what was the second thing you were mentioning? Oh, about
or jury nullification.
Yeah, jury Yeah, I mean, I believe that jury nullification is a correct doctrine, and I believe that was part of the reason for putting the right to a trial by jury, although that is very unpopular among like legal people, among lawyers and judges, right? I assume that in the constitutional court, like they would know that they're supposed to judge the law because that's like 100% of the job, right? It would be hard to tell them that you're not supposed to do that because then what are you supposed to do, right? Okay, who was next?
So we'll go to Tim and then Justin.
So the discussion of prosecuting people for constitutional violations reminded me of another way to make your proposals more radical, which actually comes out of the Anglo-American legal tradition. Prosecutions never used to be monopolized by the government under English law. All prosecutions were private. There were no professional public prosecutors. And in fact, today, still in England, the people who argue the prosecution or the defense are both lawyers in private practice. One just gets selected to argue the government's case in a particular case. But as you were saying about judges, they're not professional employees of the government, so they don't necessarily have that bias.
Yeah.
So what you can say is, again, get the government out of the prosecution business, have that be completely demonopolized, and then the other thing about it, you're concerned about, what if everybody can prosecute anyone for breaking any law? Well, we had that historically, it worked, and I would argue it's actually a good thing in that nobody would want any law on the books that they could be wrongly prosecuted for.
Yeah.
Right now, I think our system depends a lot on selective prosecution for stupid laws because the powers that be are like, I'll never get busted for this because my friends are the prosecutors.
Well, so that last part, I think it might be overly optimistic there. When people are, like a lot of people are proposing, there ought to be a law for this, ought to be a law for that. And I think they really rarely think about what would happen if they were prosecuted.
Well, it doesn't happen very much today, but if the system was set up differently.
I think people are not likely to take that step of thinking, wait, I could be prosecuted. They're more likely to just think, okay, think about all the people I can prosecute. Okay, however, I'm in favor of collapsing the criminal law and tort law. I think there shouldn't be such a distinction. Everything that you can get in trouble for should be a tort. So in other words, there should only be a court case if somebody has a complaint against somebody else and is trying to recover damages from the other person. And in that view, then there wouldn't be a need for prosecutors. There would be people who file lawsuits against other people. As I'm sure I'm sure you all probably agree with this. A problem with prosecutors is that they can make there be a case when there was no one who was harmed. Like, they can just cause all kinds of trouble. Like, they can ruin somebody's life, and there's no one who's complaining about what that person did, right? Like, you're just smoking whatever drugs in your apartment, and nobody cares, except the government just sends somebody whose job is to ruin your life, right? But, nobody was damaged by it. Okay. Anyway.
As we all understand, incentives matter, and you gave us a lot of incentives for the government colluding with one another to aggrandize each other. So, ultimately, what do you think is constraining the federal government and all governments from doing worse than they already do? If all their incentives are to get bigger and stronger and badder and more evil, what is their ultimate constraint if the words on the paper are not doing it?
Yeah,
what do you think is the ultimate constraint?
So, my view is not that the Constitution is completely impotent. It's just that the Constitution is not as effective as it was supposed to be, right? It's not that it does nothing. So the fact that there are these rules does something. Like, sometimes the Supreme Court enforces some of the rules in the Constitution. Like, sometimes they will strike down something that violates freedom of speech. They don't care about the Second Amendment, but they kind of care about the First Amendment, okay? The democratic process also, The democratic process also does something. Like, my view is it doesn't work as well as it's supposed to. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to, the way you learn in civics class, but it's not totally worthless. Like, it's better than having just a dictator. because if politicians do something that's big and obvious and really bad, then they could get voted out, right? If they do,
You mean like drone striking for American citizens?
yeah, like that, or maybe not like that. But,
They've done manifestly bad things a lot.
see, what counts as something really bad in a libertarian group? Like, there's a much lower threshold for that than outside of this room. But so, for example, Amartya Sen argues that, points out that there's never like a mass famine in a democratic country, which there frequently is in dictatorships. Okay, now you might think, oh, this is a pretty low standard. But anyway, actually, it's really good that we don't have mass famines. I'm really glad we're not in one of those dictatorships where they could just like kill 20 million people and there's nothing you can do. And they just continue on, right? Because like that actually happened in, Soviet Union and more people in communist China. So they don't do that in America because that actually would get you voted out of office if like millions of people died.
Well, that's 20 million less voters.
Yeah, right. But their family members. I mean, if you, people are connected to other people. What?
Here we just put them in prison.
Yeah.
I mean, the prison system is absolutely out of control.
Yeah.
We're not killing them; we're sticking them in a cage to rot.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there is the problem with democracy that the minorities can get screwed. And so what happens is like most of the people who are in prison don't look like most of the voters. Like most of the voters can't identify with them very well. That's like a flaw in democracy. However, at least they're not like, going and arresting just ordinary middle-class people, and wealthy people and throwing them in prison, because then they might get in trouble. Okay, yeah.
Just on the note, you brought up changing the decision rule for the legislative bodies. What do you think about changing the decision rule for voting? So instead of a simple majority, because you brought up one of these problems with democracies, right? You can essentially, you get the entire benefit of a law, but you get to offset 49% of the marginal costs from the benefit of the law.
Yeah.
Do you think it would make sense to change the voting rule for citizens when they're electing representatives or referendums to 2/3 or 3/4 to minimize kind of this problem of like you brought up, people who are a different demographic make up the prison system, right? And it's because they're in the minority. Could you minimize the expected external costs by increasing the voting?
Yeah, so that makes sense for referenda. I don't see how this is going to work for electing representatives. Because there would be too many cases where no one wins, and then right? Okay, now if you're an anarchist, okay, maybe then we should just get rid of the legislature, right? But this is under the assumption that you're a limited state person because you haven't read the second half of my book yet. In which case, you probably think that we need legislators, so there can't be too high a bar for them to get elected.
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So your third idea had something to do with punishment for violating the Constitution. I assume it was legislators that vote for a
or
bill
the president,
that violates, or the president. Or
I wanted to see Obama in prison,
That would be a lovely thought. Yeah. So my question is, you had said that throw him in jail, but there's probably not every constitutional crime warrants jail time.
Yeah.
I've heard ideas where it's just restrict them from ever running for public office for their whole lives. Is there a philosophical groundwork that leads to that idea? Are you open to any of those, or what would some of the punishments be?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that the court should just choose what the punishment is, as they do in regular criminal cases. So if it was a small thing, maybe they fine you. If it was a little bit larger, the community service.
If it's small enough to not deserve jail time, should it be in the Constitution?
Look, I mean, I don't want to try to review like what every possible provision might be in every possible violation. I don't know. But anyway, so they could decide, well, should this person get a fine, or maybe they should be removed from office. I guess the main thing that politicians care about is staying in office. So I guess that would be a significant deterrent. Or if it was something really bad, like, you ordered executions of citizens without trial and with no judicial process whatsoever, then maybe you go to prison.
Are there any other questions? Dave, go ahead.
Thanks to Michael's interesting presentation, I feel compelled to point out that we have spent the entire question and answer period focused on politics and all the endless nuances that we might alter or improve or change or whatever the Constitution, with all its warts and all its virtues. I feel compelled to remind everyone, as I did Saturday, Brett, that politics flows from morality. And unless or until there is general agreement and consensus on what is right and what is wrong and why it is right and wrong, we will spend endless evenings, endless days, months, and years on the nuances of what politically we ought to do or not to do. In my opinion, after 71 years, it's a waste of time.
So I don't see why it would be a waste of time to talk about the nuances of, what political structure should be. Like, that seems like a good use of time.
Because someone will say to you it doesn't comport with the general welfare
of the
betterment of all.
So you're saying, well, somebody might disagree. Like, okay, I think a lot of people will disagree with me. But, so then that's why we have the argument. Now, I think you're suggesting, no, we have to first get people to agree on, like, a philosophical system. And then we could infer what the correct political system is. But that's totally hopeless. That's like way more hopeless than getting people to agree on, the structure of the Constitution, right? I mean, like debates about the nature of morality go back at least to Plato. So, you're talking about a like 2,000-year debate. Okay, and I'm sensing that you're an objectivist, and if your hope is that you're going to convince, like you're going to create a general consensus on objectivism, like that, no way. Like, that's even less likely than getting a consensus on anything else.
Dave, we can have a discussion afterwards if you want to. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we're right at an hour. So, are there other questions? Like particular questions? Okay, if you want to carry on, Michael, please do.
Can they keep talking?
If we do it for another few minutes, we can do that.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Anyway,
My response to you is simply, whether or not I am an objectivist is irrelevant. I care not what your metaphysics are. I care not what your epistemology is. I only care what your morality is as it may affect me specifically. And if I can paraphrase stealing something from a friend, morality comes down to very simple things that has been made terribly complex and terribly wrong. 1, pursue your happiness. Leave me alone and don't take my stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, that sounded better than what I was hearing before. I mean, so I like the part where you said morality as it affects me, because I think the idea of our agreeing on values in general is hopeless. But then also, I think so. We should try to restrict it to figuring out the principles for our interactions with each other. But then I think that really is politics, and so so you shouldn't be complaining about it or spending a lot of time talking about politics, I guess.
What is morality? You have your own beliefs, so that doesn't come down to morality.
Well, I don't know. Some people, especially objectivists, think that morality includes.
What if it was just you? It wouldn't be morality. It wouldn't matter.
So, I mean,
get that for.
I started to say, like, objectivists would disagree with you, and some other people would disagree. They would say, no, morality just covers everything that you do. So, living for the sake of your own happiness, if you get stuck on a desert island, morality is going to tell you, well, you have to preserve your life anyway, right? Even if there are no other people. Okay, now we could have an argument about, is that the correct conception of morality? But that sounds like a semantic dispute, which is not that interesting. So, right. Okay, are we done?
Are there any other questions for Michael? No. Thank you very much, Michael.
Yep.